It's the 144th anniversary of the Battle of Isandlwana in KwaZulu-Natal on January 2022, 1879. AmaZulu warriors defeated British troops who just 11 days earlier had started the invasion of Zululand. Today, King Misuzulu kaZwelithini told the gathering at Ulundi that the commemoration was not just for the AmaZulu nation, but for black people. We now speak to Professor Musa Xulu, Executive Director of the Heritage Development Trust. Professor Musa, very good afternoon. Great, congratulations on these celebrations, 144th celebrations. Now, many things that King Misuzulu kaZwelithini spoke about today. What did you pick up from his message earlier?
Well, it was a good message. I must say it was not at Ulundi, at Isandlwana, which is about 100 kilometers northwest of Ulundi. It was a good message. It was a message of reconciliation. One of the greatest things that the king said, he stepped out of just addressing the Zulu nation and started to talking to South Africans, especially also about the issues of negativity, which is now like another bad thing that's happening in our country. And then, of course, there was also the issue about making sure that the Zulus are not isolated from the rest of South Africa, and that this celebration is not only for the Zulus. Now, we've seen that since we started with all these issues, there's been a lot of kingdoms in South Africa wanting to step up also their commemorations and look at how they can capitalize on their history. Now, the history and heritage, my brother, as you know, and the nation, is belonging to an economic sector called cultural and creative industries. And therefore, as more and more commemorations happen throughout South Africa, the more we can begin to look at this sector as an economic player in the country. Because, as you know, commemorations, music, dance, theater, natural heritage, living heritage, and all of those, even at Davos today, that was the center of the discussions. How do we make this sector to be economically active around the globe?
Well, Professor,
so when the king
Professor Musa, if you allow me to interject and pose a question that I suppose speaks to the stuff that you're saying, who takes ownership of commercializing 144 years of this amazing and remarkable history?
That's a very important question. Actually, one of the most important questions I've had to answer in many years. It is public. It is in the public domain, and therefore, currently, there is no ownership. But if we were to go in the route of intellectual property, I am saying that the Zulu kingdom would be very rich if we could begin now, through His Majesty, our King, to look at how intellectual property becomes part of the celebrations and commemorations and the history and everything. At the moment, is looked at more like public domain. I think that the Zulu brand, as you know, is global now. In 1964, a film was made, Zulu. In 1979, another film was made, Zulu Dawn. All of whatever accrues the financial gains of that goes to America and around the world and does not stay here. I think it's high time now, and I had a meeting with the King, His Majesty the King, some 2 months ago about this, that we look at the cultural economics as being fundamental to the rebuilding of the Zulu kingdom and other kingdoms in South Africa.
And what reaction did you get from His Majesty when you talked about these issues, Professor?
He's excited about it. In fact, when he started speaking like this, it's more or less the tone of his speeches, looking at how we can begin to monetize this rich tradition that we have. And I can tell you already in countries like Turkey, the women are using the knowledge, the indigenous knowledge that have been there for thousands of years to make the carpets, which everyone is looking for around the world. And we have these things, this indigenous knowledge in crafts. We have the music, the cultural Amahubo songs, be it in Venda, be it in here, and so on. It was good that His Majesty was encouraging us today to speak, to talk, to think positively. You can't create anything or grow an economy if you are engaged in a negative way of thinking about your own country. So what happens, what should be happening now, and as much as I'm excited about this, you'll remember that on the 29th of November, we held the first ever conference, which was called the Zulu Kingdom Investment Conference.
Yes.
Now, what we're talking about is how do we take that forward so that we can be able to monetize all this knowledge that we saw at Isandlwana, that we'll be seeing in other cultural events throughout the kingdom in the months that are going to come.
Professor Musa, I appreciate your time this afternoon. Professor Musa Xulu, Executive Director of the Heritage Development Trust.